Hey everybody, my name is Jenni Catron, and I am the Executive Director at Crosspoint Church in Nashville, Tennessee, and very excited to be a part of the Nines with you guys. Big thanks to Leadership Network and Catalyst for making it possible. And so I want to share with you guys just a little bit today of a journey I've been on as a church leader, and just kind of what God's been doing in my heart over the last few years in regard to my responsibility and on how God's kind of been changing and molding me as a church leader really over the past several years. There's a quote that I read just a couple months ago that kind of summarized maybe where I've been over the last couple years, and it says, "We have shrunk Jesus to the size where he can save our soul, but we don't believe that he can change the world." We've shrunk Jesus to the size where we believe he can change our souls, but we don't believe that he can change the world. And I think as a church leader, that was really where I was several years ago, and that I really believed in the power of the gospel to change lives. I was helping make that happen here at Crosspoint. But as I began to look at like the global issues and a lot of the devastation and poverty around the world that we hear of and are come in contact with all the time, I didn't really see that it was possible anymore for him to change the world. And so that's kind of where I was. And rewind about 3 years ago, my husband and I headed to Africa for a mission trip. It was kind of a mission trip, kind of a meet friends trip. We have friends that were missionaries in Africa and Malawi, and we had plans to go hang out with them, go see them, and go see Africa. And so that fall, we headed over to Africa for 2 weeks, and we had just come off of a really busy season at Crosspoint. We had just done a capital campaign. We had, we're in the middle of renovating a facility that we were moving into, and I was ready for a break. Frankly, I was just a little bit exhausted and felt like I was just ready to disconnect, get away, and go enjoy a bit of a vacation. I'm not quite sure why I thought Africa would be vacation, considering I wouldn't have a whole lot of showers and hot ones at that, and not the best of facilities and things like that. But at any rate, I just was prepared to just disconnect. And we did do some fun stuff. We got to do safari and things like that. But what really hit me was our second week there. We went out into some of the villages and different areas where our friends were doing mission work, and I'll never forget the images of some of the small children and the issues that I saw just rampant, from health related to lack of water to poverty to just, you name it, we saw it. All the things that you see on TV, we saw it and experienced it in the span of a week. And I remember looking to our friends who were there, living there, and I said, "Guys, how do we fix this?" You know, as any good A-type dominant driver personality like myself, I was pretty sure there had to be a fix, and I was ready to do it. And as we talked, I just realized more and more that it wasn't a quick fix, and that the issues were pretty broad scope. And it really just kind of, and again, I was kind of tired, and I just kind of emotionally shut down from it. I kind of turned off and just kind of walked away. And we come back to Nashville and get back into the regular routine and regular life, and kind of went on my merry way and kind of tried to block those images out of my mind. And fast forward to the fall of last year, and Pete, our senior pastor here at Crosspoint, brought a challenge to our leadership team, and really felt that as a church we needed to increase what we were doing as far as missions and our efforts in that area, and just really challenging our church sacrificially to increase what we're doing in that way. And so his proposal was, let's increase our missions giving by additional % next year. At that point as a church, we had been giving 10% of our giving to missions every year, and we'd done that for the last 6 years, and so it had kind of become pretty easy and complacent and important, but just kind of become the norm, and it was no longer sacrificial for us as a church. And so he says, let's increase it by 1% next year. And we're like, okay, good, we can do that. And he says, let's increase it by another % the next year, and another % the next year. So for over the next 10 years, we'll increase our missions giving by 1% every year for the next 10 years, to the point of 20% of our income as a church goes back out the doors to missions. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I get it, makes sense. And then I stopped and I thought, I get it, but I don't get it. Like, of course, I'm the executive director, so I'm the one having to figure out, how do we do this in the budget? How do we make this happen? And so my head starts crunching all the numbers. But my heart started to reconnect with those images I had seen in Africa. And I just thought, I don't know if just throw money at it's going to work. I just don't know if it makes a difference. I don't know that we can make a change. I don't know if it matters. And I'm even kind of ashamed to say that a little bit. But over the course of then several months, God just kind of brought me face to face with different organizations, different churches that were making a difference, that life by life, person by person, were making a difference in the lives of people all around the world, from watching and visiting the Healing Place Church in Baton Rouge and seeing what they're doing with all their outreach efforts in the city, to seeing the efforts of like Compassion International and World Vision and the difference they're making in individual lives all across the globe, to a lot of just smaller organizations that I just kind of repeatedly kept coming into contact with. I started to get just a glimmer of hope and to see that life by life, dollar by dollar, we can make an impact. We can change the world, and God is big enough to change the world. I read the book, The Hole in Our Gospel by Richard Stearns, and he quotes Bob Pierce, who is the founder of World Vision, and he says, "Don't fail to do something just because you can't do everything." And that's exactly where I was. I was not doing anything. I wasn't doing something because I couldn't do everything. And if I couldn't fix it, I didn't even want to engage with it. So that's kind of where my head and my heart were as a church leader. And God just really kind of radically blew the doors open on me and challenged me to see that we could do something and we could influence change. And so then I began to read a lot of statistics, things like, as American Christians, our income is like $5.2 trillion. And I got to thinking, you know what, as a church leader, and the church leaders that I'm talking to today, we have the impact, we have the opportunity to impact and help direct the resources of American Christians. And just 1% of that $5.2 trillion would pull the poorest 1 billion people out of poverty. Like, when you start talking about statistics like that and you recognize that just that amount of impact, that just 1% of anything could start having a massive impact when we as American Christians kind of get our head and our heart around this, I started to see the how. Like, I was hung up on the how. I didn't know if it was possible, and I really started to see the how, and I started to see that our impact could make a massive difference. So at Crosspoint, we're increasing by 1% every year. That's what we're doing. We're starting somewhere. And by just doing that, as we started looking at the statistics, as a church, we'll give additional like $3 million to missions over the next 10 years because of that choice. That's above and beyond what we would originally have done. And so to start seeing that impact, to see that as we go forward, we can make a greater impact, just really gives me hope that we can change the world, that God is big enough to change the world, and that I believe He truly wants us as church leaders to lead the way in that.